Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee with Kari. I'm Kari the Mortician. Doing an evening segment today. I've gotten a lot of people saying to me, I can't catch you live in the morning, so I thought I would do one a little bit later in the day today for all those folks, the West Coasters and just, other countries and everybody. So welcome. I got to chat earlier today with two ladies from across country asking me 3 questions. The one was a historian, and oh my goodness, did she stump me with some of her questions. We really posed some interesting things from history and are going to look into some answers for you because it's really fun to dive into why things were done a certain way. But I don't have that knowledge base on a lot of historical things. So we're going to dive into that. And the other woman was just the sweetest, and she really touched on heartfelt topics. So the questions are really from all over the place. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hey, Sarah. Hello, everybody. So many faces and names I know. Hey, Wendy. I'm actually starting with Wendy's questions, some of Wendy's. Tell me about the first time you were recognized in public. The first time, honest to goodness, that I was recognized in public, I was at a Daniel Tiger show with my family, and I was just sitting there, and this woman walks up and says, "Excuse me, are you Kari Northey?" And I said, "Yes." And usually when people ask me that, like the Rolodex in your brain starts running as fast as you can to people from where I grew up, people that I've served. Did I bury somebody in her family? Like, she knows me, I need to know her. And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "Oh my gosh, I watch you on YouTube." And this was much earlier on, maybe around 15,000 subscribers, maybe. And it blew my mind that I ran into a person that actually had been watching me. And I was so more excited to meet her than I think her to meet me. It was a very surreal moment. I still don't know how to deal with that when I meet people in person. And it's only happened, I think, twice, except for like conventions. But it is still really fun to do. I understand there are times the funeral director has to be there in person and some things can be done by others. What activities require you to be there? So like by law in Michigan, guys, I'm a little wacky in the evening. A funeral director needs to be present in the evening, a funeral director needs to be present at a disposition. Goodness, guys. And so the funeral director needs to be at the burial. Typically, a funeral director will wait to have the vault lid go on the vault, and then things are kind of done for us in terms of our legality. And so other things that can be done in our state, you don't have to be licensed to write a contract and to make an arrangement. In some states you do. So it depends on the state what you're able to actually do. If you can write a trust where people put their money in ahead of time. So there's a lot of different areas, but you don't have to be licensed in all of them all the time. So check out the laws of your state if you're wondering. Hey, Austin Baker. I'm Johnny Mayo, a funeral attendant. I'm new to watching you. Well, welcome. Hi, can you suggest the best website to find information on how to become a funeral director? Or do you have a video on a topic? I do have a video about going to mortuary school. The process is going to depend a little bit on your state. And if you want to be just a funeral director or a funeral director and embalmer, and that's going to depend on your state as well. So I don't think there's one specific website. National Funeral Directors Association is what is going to regulate our whole country here in the US. And so not regulate, but they are an organization that, people from the US are all going to be part of, along with national, a lot of international as well. So that might be a good place to go too. Oh, thank you, Dylan. So Dylan, who has been checking in, her friend's baby. They had a visitation, they had a memorial service, and they had everything. And she's saying that the baby's cremated remains were picked up. So, do the metal designs on the side of the hearses mean anything? Kind of that scroll work on the back panel. I have been asked that before. Hey, Robert, I need to find. It's not something that is like just out there. So I need to dive into that as well, talking about history and find that out. So I'll try and find that out for you if that scroll work, if there's anything. Ooh, Robin's having wine with Kari. I am not having any wine, by the way. Hey, everybody. Hey, honey. Have you gotten a chance to do a pet's funeral yet? I have not overseen, aside from my own pets, done a pet's funeral. A lot of times people just have the pet cremated and then they take them home and do their own thing. Is it common for the ankles of a deceased to be crossed in the casket? No, not necessarily. Sometimes that's just how the legs will fit, because your legs straight out and your feet straight up is not a natural. So if you just lay down, your knees go to the side, and if they're bent too much, you're not going to fit in the casket. So crossing the legs sometimes is a way to, or the ankles is a way to bring the legs together without having to force them together at the knees or anything. Hey, Leo, welcome. My birthday, that was back in June, but it was good. It was a good birthday. Hey, Joshua Moon, how are you? I like there's these little emojis in the money bars. I don't know what they're called. That's funny. Hey, Chris, with the ever-changing climate, have you encountered any difficulties surrounding COVID-19 lately? I have not lately. We are kind of at a standstill right now with numbers and things. The biggest is that our national cemetery, that fluctuates more because it's regulated federally rather than per each state. And they are finally doing military honors again and allowing up to 40 people. And so they have broadened, because that was the biggest thing for a long time, is that people couldn't even have a graveside service at the military and at the military cemetery. And so people were holding on to their cremated remains, or, some funeral homes were storing individuals until they could have an actual military honor service at the cemetery. So that has kind of ramped up, where a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork now to bury their loved ones. Drew, that's really cool. Drew found a cemetery in Decatur, Georgia that has a soldier from every war buried in it. Hey, from the UK. Ooh, it's late over there. It's middle of the night. Would it be tacky to metal detect in a cemetery? How deep does that penetrate to find things? I saw a guy metal detecting in the lake. I didn't even know you could do that you could put it on, like literally the whole thing was underwater. He had on a pair of headphones and he was walking around the lake. I had no idea that was a thing. I heard something interesting on CNN tonight about the last responders in Texas. They said there's a 2-week wait to get into a crematory. They're running out of refrigerated trucks and anywhere to put bodies. So that's Texas. Had Arizona are kind of ramped up, not quite like New York was, but they're definitely hot spots right now for COVID, and refrigerator trucks are a thing. However, there was this news article that was popping up a lot that a bunch of people were complaining because the funeral home had a refrigerator truck. So you have a funeral home has bodies in a U-Haul out back. They get bad press, which they should. And then you have a funeral home who's getting a refrigerated truck to take care of the bodies because he doesn't have space inside the funeral home. So he's using a refrigerator truck to keep them cooled, and he gets bad press. Can't win. Do you see this with the funeral business? We just can't win. Drew's asking, why do some believe put rocks on the grave markers? That's the Jewish header to this video. And I need to figure out, I need to learn why. I think it's a really cool thing. I feel like I remember seeing something about how many stones and what it means, but I can't remember for sure. So we'll have a 2-minute video on rocks on headstones or something. Holly, it was so fun chatting with you. It was great. So many good comments. Let's see. Here's 3 questions. I've seen surveillance videos of a family member approaching a casket after the viewing, supposedly to say a final goodbye. The real purpose, however, is to remove jewelry from the deceased. Have you ever experienced such a theft? Does the funeral industry have in place some sort of protocol for dealing with the issue? I have never experienced that or had anybody claim that anything was stolen. If, just like anything, if somebody saw something happen like that, I would ask them if they want the police called. I'm not going to approach somebody probably that might have just committed a theft and say, hey, empty your pockets. I mean, that's not my position. Just like if there's a fight breakout, it's not my role to break it up. So I would probably call the authorities in and, maybe try and keep the person there until they got there. And keep quiet and not alert everybody that we were going to call the authorities. I would have to play the situation out kind of in each scenario is going to be different. So I would just go with what was happening and see how I would, respond, I guess, to it. Man, Kat, what do you think about a mock funeral arrangement video? I know, guys. It's going to be one that's going to take a while to set up. So I've got to get people in place and I have to get a location to set up to do it and stuff. So have you received any negative comments when someone learns your career? All the time. Just all the normal, people are dying to get in to see you. That's so gross. I can't believe you do that. Imagine trying to date with this, vocation. It always elicits interesting responses back in the day. But yeah. Hi, Steve. Thanks for catching me live. Are some caskets made for the person to lay opposite of what we'd normally see? Tony's asking. You would use a full couch where you would flip them to the other end. You can't flip a half couch because the foot end is typically not finished in the way that the head end is. Thanks, Amber. Amber really liked the procurement center video. Do they have to do embalming any different when transporting a body like the congressman or others from different states before the final resting place? They're just going to make sure that they're well preserved. And I'm going to bet that there is somebody traveling with the deceased that's going to be in charge of making sure that deceased looks good all the time. All the time. So typically with dignitaries and such, Matt Smith, the professional embalmer we talk about, he took care of a dignitary in another country. He was flown there to do the preparation work and get the gentleman ready. And for the week that he toured around the country, Matt was with the gentleman in the body. He was there making sure every time they set up, every time everything was happening, that person looked their absolute best. You're going to have to retouch. You may have to straighten clothing and get them all set again because a lot of eyes are going to be on that individual, not even just the press, but just people visiting and such. So, hey, Olivia, welcome. Can someone be laid to rest on their stomach in the casket? Yeah, they can. So, hey, Olivia, your daughter made it home. Can we still chat? Made it home from where? Have you ever encountered someone coming into the funeral home claiming to be a medium or psychic? No, not coming into the funeral home. No. Wanted to do ghost hunts at funeral homes though, but I've always been a little worried on what they might find. When my dad died in 1978, his sister approached the casket and proceeded to rub his bald head, after which she rubbed her neck with the same hand. She explained to me that she understood the practice warded off goiters. Have you witnessed illogical or even creepy events or rituals involving a deceased person? That is the first. That rubbing a bald head of a dead man would rub, and then rubbing would ward off goiters. No, I have not. Yeah, no, I think kids always have these like, oh, kind of like the step on a crack and you break your mother's back. There's little things that go along with cemeteries and such, not so much funeral homes, but I don't think there's a lot of them. I have never heard of such a thing, never even a joke or a talk of such a thing. So I think that maybe she just had a wacky thing about her. One of my dad's brothers was killed in 1944 at the age of 25. He was listed as MIA until 75 years later when DNA samples provided by me and a female descendant proved that he was my uncle. His bones were. So they were shipped back to an undertaker in his hometown. The Army also furnished a vault. The remains were buried with full military honors. Have you dealt with military personnel returning after a long period of time? No. So Jim, I have not. And I just did a video with Dominic Astorino about his experience doing that. So I do have a friend that has submitted her DNA to see if some remains linked to her or not. So waiting to see if that is the case. How long will a properly embalmed person look good? There's no way to tell. There's no timeline for every person. I know a funeral director had someone that died at a funeral. How does that happen? You just die. I had a lady, I thought she was going to die during a funeral. She actually died about 2 days later. And, just poor health. Often it's maybe the spouse of the person that's being buried. It just happens. People can die anywhere. So I know it's a pretty ironic place to die at the funeral homes, but do funeral homes have security systems like an alarm? Some do. Yeah, some do. Not all of them, but definitely I'm trying to think of the ones I work at, and about half have a security system. What was the most emotional moment of your career aside from your family member? Watching, so there was a baby that died, and she had a sister, and the little girl, she was fine at the funeral home because she could see her sister, she could see her parents, everything, was okay in her little world. But at the cemetery, she realized that she was leaving her baby sister there, and the pure pain of her cries was one of the worst things ever to experience. My hair looks great, thanks. I just pulled it back because we're at the end of the day here, guys. End of the day. I'm navigating the loss of my second parent-in-law. Hey, Callisto. I've come to terms that I'm scared to die myself. How do I navigate this as a student funeral director? You don't. Honestly, I'm terrified of dying. It never is going to go away. Just because you're a funeral director doesn't mean it takes away fear of death. They're two different things. We take care of the dead, but dying and being dead is a completely different thing. We have no control over so much. So we have to focus on what we have control over. We have control over taking care of the dead and their bodies, but we can't focus on death, or else we can't function, any of us, no matter if we're a funeral director or not. So the fear is there. I live with it, but I try not to think about it and let it control me and let it be this huge thing. So how long do people keep their parents for? What do you mean, keep their parents? If someone was put away very well, what would be left of their remains 20 years later? Nope, that's what everybody asks, Michael. It's not a strange question, and there's no answer because there's way too many variables. We need to know casket, vault, location, not cause of death, but like so much about their death we need to know. There's just too many variables. Andy, you're welcome. Thank you. I can get loud if you want. Ask my kids. I can get real loud. Yay, UK is representing. Oh, do I recommend any mortuary? I don't really recommend any mortuary schools. I don't want to play favorites. All of them that I've done tours on have all been lovely to go to. If you want to do online, there's lots online, but there's so many mortuary schools I have had no interaction with. So I can't really say good, bad, or indifferent about any of them. Yeah, Callisto, it's common and it's natural and it's okay. It's okay. Have you done a funeral for someone with COVID-19? Yeah, I have. Go Cubs, go. Yes. Why do America have open caskets and the UK doesn't? Is it some kind of legal thing? No. So it's just customary kind of what they do. They do have, viewing. The family comes and views the person sometimes for days in a row at the funeral home, but they don't have often like the open casket, huge funeral, everybody gaze upon the deceased sort of thing. That's not common in a lot of areas there. Why? It's just what's always been done. Kind of like what's here. It's what's always been done. Thanks, Jean. Do you have a list of countries you would like to visit to observe their funeral procedures and arrangements to compare against the US, or would you just like to be involved with? So Chris Dean, here is my dream. I can't say I've ever dreamed to be on TV or anything, but how fun would it be to go send the American funeral director to out in the bush Africa, or to somewhere out in Australia, or to some Asian culture somewhere, and just put that person in and have them experience the different cultural, down to the river times and watch the cremation. Is it river times? No. Down to the river to watch the cremations on the water in India, and all these things that would be so cool to experience as a reality show. How fun would that be? So yeah, write a letter to somebody and tell them you want Kari Northey to go travel and do funeral stuff in other countries. I just think that would be the coolest thing ever. What is the name of the program? The printed sheets that are given out of the funeral and the deceased? Well, folders, memorial cards. People call them different things in different places. Yeah, JW, you got me. You know me, friend. You know me well. No, all the COVID-19 cases do not have autopsies in the US. I don't know why. That's something I've questioned. Is a COVID body contagious? Very much so, yes. Do your funeral homes require embalming? Most funeral homes that I know require embalming for a public viewing, just because we can control what the deceased looks like for the most part. Funeral directors and friends, great show. Do funeral homes offer prepayment for cremation services? Yes, it's just like burial. So cremation is a disposition and a burial of a casketed body, or natural burial is a disposition, and it's anything that leads up to it that is a service choice. So some people think direct cremation is a service or is a disposition choice when it's actually a service option. So you can prepay any of the things and pre-fund and pre-arrange any type of a disposition that it is you want. So even if there's not a water cremation place in your state, maybe they can travel you to the water cremation place to have that done. So there's all these different options, but you research them for yourself. The funeral home may not lay all these options out in front of you. They may just take your order basically, which it's terrible, but that's what some people do, depending on the funeral director. And so going in, knowing what you want, and then getting some more options from there is always good to do. Oh, the most interesting or themed funeral you have done. Were you able to say wear gold if the family requested gold or a tie with dinosaurs on it? It depends on the funeral home you work at. Some funeral homes will allow some things like that, and some want to stay a little more straight-laced. So it really depends on the funeral home. I think I talked about this last week or the week before that, some funeral homes will give a stipend to the funeral director for every family that they're serving for the funeral and for the setup. And hey, this lady loved angels, go buy a bunch of angel figurines and set them up and kind of create this whole setup rather than just the casket with flowers, and kind of mix things up a little. Or maybe the person was like a firefighter, bring in a hose and set up, and maybe get like a fake hydrant and set it up and kind of create this whole visual to the space instead of just the standard casket and flowers. What did I think of the funeral customs overall in the UK? Was there anything you particularly like that's different to the US? I really like the classiness of having the conductor who leads the hearse down the road and going to the family's house like we did. But this is, I worked with one funeral home there. I don't know how widespread what they do is. I know that they were one of the most top-notch firms I've ever seen work at all. I mean, the work they do is so just top of the line, just their presentation, their respect, their reverence, just everything with them was amazing. But I don't know if every little thing they do is normal for the whole country or for the whole, the whole UK. So it's hard to know outside of that, but I love the conductor. I love the top hat. I love all of that part of it. If you prepay for services, make sure it is in writing that those prices are locked in. That way you won't be charged more for the items you already paid for. Correct. There's going to be guaranteed items, and then your cash advances are not guaranteed because they're not controlled by the funeral home. So many states it's illegal actually to guarantee cash advances, but that money's always there towards those items. So you'll always have kind of, a money pot towards whatever the end goal is for the cash advances. All right, some of these Wendy wants me to answer with Little Miss Funeral and Joelle the Grave Woman. So I'll save some of those for later for that. How do you cover the smell at a viewing? There's not always a smell that's that strong, and I think that's some of why flowers were always a big thing, that some of that masked some of the smells. A documentary with yourself and even Ask a Mortician traveling the world would be a great series, debunking myths, promoting the cultural and exquisite ways that people mourn and celebrate a loved one. I think it'd be great, don't you? I have these ideas, but it's not like I can just, email somebody. You have to go through all these channels. I've looked into it, I promise you. Most funeral directors here are immaculate. The car, yeah, it's so amazing. So I have coming to St. Louis, going to be down there around the 14th, 15th, 13th, 14th, 15th or so. And I'm setting up a tour at a water cremation place. So that will be our meet and greet while I'm in St. Louis. So watch for me to post an official event thing on it. So we'll do a tour, and then maybe we can all meet for lunch at a location or something. I don't know. That's the idea, though. That way you guys can, whoever wants to come and is there, can meet me. I can meet you. We can check out the water cremation and chat for a little bit. So that is all scheduled, that I'm coming down, and it's just solidifying the time and everything for that actual meet and greet. So JW, did you hear me? I know you've been waiting. Do you have much interaction with hospice social workers? We do not with the social workers. I will tell you that it is a very tightrope walk of a relationship between hospice sometimes and funeral homes, because we are finding that it's not just specific hospice organizations, but specific workers get in and they give information and tell families who to call, or give them just prices and tell them to pick from a price list, rather than the family actually making a decision about the funeral home. And so they're not able to make what might be the best decision for themselves, but the hospice worker thinks they're helping by doing what they're doing. And sometimes what they do is illegal because they're steering a family or telling a family who to call. So there's some things that happen that are not always the best. How do you handle 2-3 funerals in one day? You schedule them out appropriately. If you have overlapping ones, then you have to have 2 directors and 2 sets of staff and everything to run them. Cool, JW. Yeah. Would you let someone stay the night with their loved one in the funeral home? By all means. We would just have to facilitate it. And I'm never going to deny a family time with their loved one, because once the casket closes and we bury them, or once they're sent for cremation, that's it. They never get to see that person's body again. But there's also a time and place to let go. I had a woman that was emailing me, and she just, make him last a little longer. And how could I make him last longer? And it had been weeks since he died, weeks. And I finally just said, you need to let him go. Like you can only do so much. And right now he is decomposing and you need to let him go. And I hate to be the one to say that. And I always hate having to tell families that, like, it's time to go to the cemetery. It's time for this. Somebody has to do it, I guess. So that's one of the harder things to have to do, is to tell people it's time to stop being with their loved one's body. So that's always really, really rough. I came to Atlanta last year. Was that last year? I think it was last year, maybe in the spring or so. And so I don't know when I'll be coming back. I always plan to go to new places, but at some point I am sure that I will be back down to Atlanta, because that's where Miss Joelle is, and I just love her. So I'm sure I will be back down there. That's not Ralph. So this set of pictures, I have the snow one and this one, and that's my mom got these for me. You all know my mom if you've watched a bunch of my videos, and she got it because it does look like Ralph. And the only toy he ever played with was tennis balls. Legit ever. If he was given a squeaky toy, he would, within like 2 minutes, rip the squeak out and he was done. He just wanted it to shut up, and he was done. But he always played with tennis balls. So come to Phoenix. That's on the plan. So my dad died of COVID. Does embalming and disinfectant make it safe for open casket viewing? There is no study on this yet. Some funeral directors have tried to conduct their own testing and try to see if after embalming that there's no COVID. Some tests have come back positive. Some have come back inconclusive. Some have come back negative. So it's a huge gray area. We disinfect and do everything we can with the hopes that we are killing the bug, but there's no study, there's no information, there's nothing for sure on this yet. Can someone get their pet embalmed? This is something I really need to look into. I have known of some people who have embalmed animals, but legality wise, like you can't cross, like in a crematory, you can't use one retort for pets and humans. Some states have just allowed pets to be buried with humans, even if it's like cremated remains. So I need to look into some of this embalming animals thing and get more information, because a couple of people have actually asked me about this recently. Can a deceased person be subjected to taxidermy as an alternative means of preservation? I feel like I answered this before, but our skin is not as thick and hide-like as a lot of animals that are taxidermied. So I don't think we would hold up very well to take off our dermis and lay it over a mold. I feel like we would dry out really quickly. I'm sure someone's tried it, maybe illegally as a serial killer or something. I don't know, but I just don't picture that it would last very long because of how thin a lot of our tissue is. Yeah. Why can't I have my cremated remains spread on my mom's grave? The cemetery owns the property, even though you technically own your mom's grave space. So they kind of have the final say. So if they allow you to, then you do. I've known many people who have gone out and just spread cremated remains when no one's looking. If it's illegal and they've told you no, then that's illegal. I'm not advocating for that, but just to ask if it's okay. Say, I don't want them buried. I just want to spread them. Is it okay? See what they say. Why can't people be buried with their pets? I think it's, hey, Olivia, I don't think it's religious. I just think it's commingling of animals with humans, that it's just not okay to some people. That's the only reason I can think, is maybe they think animals are dirty and humans aren't, or I'm not quite sure. Come to Pittsburgh. I need to come back to Pittsburgh because I was there for such a short period of time. I really didn't get to see anything. I just drove up a crap ton of hills. And Pittsburgh is so hilly. If you have never been to Pittsburgh, it is like hill after hill after hill after hill. I thought I was driving off a cliff most of the time, so I couldn't even like look out over the city and at the city as I was driving, because I thought I was going to drive off an embankment most of the time. It was kind of terrifying. But I would like to come back. Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science has a lot of great training for licensed people, and they were canceled for earlier this year. But I would like to come to some maybe next year. Been out there. Have you ever done a Jehovah's Witness funeral? Yes, I have. Do funeral homes offer therapists or grief counselors? An aftercare coordinator is someone who works at the funeral home with families afterwards. And they sometimes are social workers or therapists that have groups like grief support groups, or they help guide you to grief support groups, or can meet and chat with you. If they're not licensed counselors, they can't be doing counseling, but sometimes they are, and that's their role at the funeral home. So it just depends on the funeral home. Come to Kentucky, come to Cincinnati. I've already been there. I was in Cincinnati last year. So I will be traveling at some point, guys. I'll get around to a few more places. One last question here from Ron, and I'll do maybe one or two more. And this one's a little longer today, our chat. My final question is, are there greener alternatives to using formaldehyde as an embalming agent since it is potentially harmful to the environment? There are, and there's green chemicals, but they just don't do what an embalming chemical is going to do. To me, if you're going to embalm somebody, then you want the preservation. Like the goal of embalming is preservation. So if you're using a subpar item, even though it's greener, but you're getting a result that's not up to a standard that you want to work by, then it's not worth it to me if I can't control the end result because of the product I'm using. It gets really hard. I think it's a really hard thing to want to meet the needs of the family, but not be able to do what it is you are supposed to be doing. I think that's a hard thing to do. Oh, at what point can a funeral home refuse storage any longer and insist the deceased be buried or cremated? You know, it's really up to the funeral home. The thing is, like, here at any of the funeral homes I work at or work for, I can't imagine that holding somebody and having like the family stop in and having to bring them. So like in England, they have the deceased there, you call, you make a time that you're going to come down and spend time. So they bring them out and they bring them to the viewing room, and then they bring them back to the back, and then they bring them up and they bring them down. They don't have visitations going on and funerals in the funeral homes going on because they're small spaces. They basically just run the business out of them and have the immediate family viewing there. And then they go offsite for the funeral and for the burial and cremation and everything. So if you put in here your normal staff and visitations and funerals going on, but then you also had this in the cooler, out of the cooler, in the cooler, out of the cooler, in the cooler, out of the cooler, it would consume a lot of time. So I can't see that funeral homes would love doing that, or they would charge by the viewing. I don't know. I think that you would get into this thing where they would start charging or something to make it so to deter people from doing that kind of action. It would be weird. I don't know. It's not normal for us here. You have like your visitation time and then you have your burial or cremation. And so, yeah, I can't see it happening a lot here, but I mean, she was at the point, like the funeral home was giving her tools that she could try to do things to her husband herself to preserve. I would never allow a family to just come get stuff out of the prep room and the care center and work on their spouse or work on a family member and try and do things to the deceased. Like that to me is like a lawsuit and crazy waiting to happen. To me, I don't understand that. Why the funeral home would not have intervened there more and said, let us do what it is you're wanting to accomplish so we can get to this end stage for you of trying to restore or whatnot. But in your years of being a director, have you found a tradition that has been lost to modernization that you feel should still be used in today's society? So many, Chris, like so many. Home funerals, taking care of your loved ones yourself, bathing them yourself, dressing them yourself, any of the hands-on things. We went from hands-on and bringing home your loved ones to your house and people coming over and having these gatherings to mom just died. Can you pick her up where she's at, cremate her, and then just call me when the box is ready? I don't get it. I do not get that mentality. I never will. You can't explain it to me in any good capacity because I don't get it. Thanks, Chris. What if you're allergic to that? The embalming fluids, I'm guessing. So like as a family member, what if you're allergic to them? I mean, I would do what the family needed if it was something dramatic, but I would, if it was allergies or something like that, definitely we could do something different. But anything else, I would have a conversation as to why. Hey, Katie, how common is it for you to not be able to offer a viewing? Not often anymore because of cremation kind of alleviating some of the building usage. That doesn't happen as much. Yeah, once someone's embalmed, they're typically not going to go in the cooler in the storage area unless you knew it was going to be for a longer duration and you wanted to just like do as much as you could. What's the difference between a funeral director and a funeral attendant? Somebody that just works the funeral, so they swing door is what I would say. They work the door, they greet people, they show them to the book. That's an attendant. Where the funeral director is the person that kind of oversees all of it. Oh, Mary, thank you. You're the sweetest. Have you ever thought of writing a book on your experiences? I do have a book planned. It's finding time, guys. It's finding time. It's there. It'll happen. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Well, I'm going to log off. I try and keep these to 30, but good golly, we went to 45 today. Maybe I'll pop on for another one another day this week. We'll see. I did get a lot of questions this last week to answer, but I've been editing a lot, some late nights and some really early mornings, trying to get some things edited and lined up for you in the coming weeks. So thank you guys for everything. If you have any ideas on places from Southwest Michigan down to St. Louis that I must stop and check out that have to do with funerals or cemeteries or something, not just because it's cool, like the biggest ball of twine or something, but that would be fun too. Something maybe I need to check out on my drive down to Missouri when I go in October. Message me, email me, let me know what you think I should stop and check out on my way. And if there's other things in St. Louis that I maybe need to check out, funeral related, let me know. So thanks, guys, for all of your support and your questions. You're amazing. Everybody have a good night. I appreciate you. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye.